Paul, we're just going to be having a conversation here, involving Patriots, National Football League, some Brian Flores, some, Mac doing the gritty at the Pro Bowl, all kinds of stuff, man. So it's just a conversation, nothing new,
Okay.
nothing you haven't spoken about already, probably, or written about anyway.
All right, sounds good. Let's get to it.
Get to it.
Word.
Y'all good?
That's
Everybody
right.
good?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Yo, what to do, everybody? It's your boy, John Altidor, Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Back at you with my boys, Vlad and Barry, and today a really special guest, editor at Patriots.com, co-host of Patriots Unfiltered Podcast, Patriots Unfiltered TV, and, everything Boston sports around here, the great Paul Perillo, man. How you doing?
Doing great, guys. Quite an intro there. I like it. A lot of unfiltered talk.
How's everything, man? How you been?
It's going pretty good. It's been pretty busy for the offseason, though. It's supposed to be, throttling back a little bit after the Patriots get eliminated for the playoffs, but it's been pretty busy. A lot of pretty big stuff going on, both in the league and with the Patriots specifically. So we've been busy.
Yeah. We're going to get to a bunch of that, man. But, I think today everybody's up in arms about the Pro Bowl and how it's two-hand touch now. There's guys that are for it, and there's, the older guys that want to see people still getting hit. Where do you stand on that topic?
Yeah, I think the Pro Bowl is probably outlived its usefulness in terms of a game. If you want to have, name the Pro Bowl team, and even if you want to have, maybe a weekend of festivities, like I thought the skills competition, was probably a step in the right direction, just kind of have some lighthearted fun with some of the players, and especially you had it, in Vegas. So it's probably a pretty popular destination for players, to go with their families for a weekend or some long weekend. But to play a game, to me, is a little bit of a waste of time. And you kind of saw that a little bit on Sunday. I don't think there's really too much interest in anybody getting hit or hurt, more importantly. So I don't know exactly what the perfect solution is. You can't play football at half speed. You can play the other games. Hockey and basketball have all-star games that are obviously not anywhere near what the sports really look like, but no one's in danger, of getting hurt doing it the way they do it in general. So they got to find a way to maybe tweak it a little bit and maybe just have a weekend of events.
Yeah, I'd agree personally, because football is just one of these games. Like we get an injury like pretty much every game throughout the year, and it really makes no sense for a guy to, thinking about a guy like J.C. Jackson who's going in a contract year that can make X amount of dollars, and he's going full speed out there and tears an ACL, then there goes his big payday. It really doesn't make sense for a lot of those guys to actually be going out there full speed. Right.
And that's the fear. And everybody thinks back to, and you guys are all a lot younger than me. So I don't know if you remember Robert Edwards back in the late 80s, 1998. Yeah. He was a rookie, and he was taking part in some of those kinds of events that I'm talking about, not even the game, but a beach game. And he ended up, really damaging his knee, and he was never the same. His career basically ended as a result of an injury like that. So no one wants to see that happen. But at the same time, I think it's important that you have Pro Bowl teams and you recognize, the stars in the game and whatnot. And I think the fans enjoy that aspect of it. I'm not sure how many people enjoyed what they watched for a game yesterday. But personally, I didn't see any of it. I saw the highlights, obviously, and I did get to see Mac Jones, do something interesting in the end zone. I'm not sure exactly what that was, but it was good to see him having some fun, and some of the other guys looked like they enjoyed it too.
Yeah, I don't think any of us here actually watched the Pro Bowl yesterday.
I didn't watch it
Did
at
you
all.
guys?
I actually did, like some of it.
Wow.
And I mainly only watched it because of Mac Jones, because I wanted to see how Mac Jones looked out there with all the other Pro Bowlers and and All Stars that were on the field. So that was really my only reason and attraction to watch the Pro Bowl. Other than that, I didn't really watch it. And I only watched maybe like a quarter. I didn't really watch too much, like towards the end of the third quarter and the fourth quarter. So
Right.
yeah, I wasn't.
So I'll be going to Barry with all of my Pro Bowl questions because he's the only one that watched.
Right, since you're the only one. I think, Mac was a surprise add-on to the Pro Bowl because nobody else seemed like they wanted to play.
Yeah,
They were injured or they're like, dude, no way. But I felt like he went out there and did the best that he could with it, and he had fun out there. And, he kind of like raised his profile a little bit because he's, the Patriots players don't show their personalities too much, during the season. So I was happy to see him out there enjoying himself. But I was listening to the Sports Hub. Everybody's making a big deal about, him dancing out there. Did you have a problem with that, or you think that was,
Not really. I mean, the part of it that I would agree with you, John, is I felt like it was a chance for him to maybe raise his profile a little bit. Good to see him get a chance to sort of interact with some of the veteran players around the league and get a little bit more comfortable in his environment. The dance and inside, that was kind of silly and goofy, but who cares? I think he was just having fun. I didn't think it was anything to be necessarily worried about, but also I didn't think it was anything to say, wow, look at him, he's come of age. I just thought he was having fun out there, and the nature of the game, with the whole two-hand touch there, and he ends up running 60 some odd yards, after the play was over, and I just think he was having fun. It didn't really move the needle for me one way or the other.
Right, you got to show a little showmanship out there, and the crowd was into it, man. I think that's some of the unimportant stuff we wanted to get to, but I'll get that out of the way real quick.
Like the dance moves.
Right. He did well, but the NFL, it seems like every other day it's getting hit by something. We had Brian Flores come out. What was that, last week or the week prior?
Last Tuesday.
That was last week with the lawsuit against the NFL. Where he's talking about the NFL. There's racism in their hiring practices.
Right.
And then, one thing I did see today was a report about Deflategate. And, they're reporting that pretty much what all New England fans know already, that, that was a sham, and, they kind of screwed the team there. What are your thoughts on the Brian Flores situation?
Yeah, I think it's enormous. I think it's really, anytime you get a guy that sues the league and three teams in specifically, I think it's really important. And the hiring practices are what they are. I mean, I think it's right there. You can see it. The numbers are right in front of you. There aren't enough black and minority coaches in general. Given the amount of black players there are in the league, I think we'd all like to see that number raise up a little bit. I think it's also a touchy subject because I think on the one hand, I think you have to allow these teams to hire the coach that they want to hire. And if it happens to be a black coach, great. If it's not a black coach, great. As long as it's the guy that you think is right for the job. I don't think anyone's suggesting you should hire a minority because that's the right thing to do, even if you don't think he's as good a coach as someone else who might be available. That part to me is always in question. It's hard to tell. It's hard for me to sit there and tell the New York Giants, for example, one of the teams that Brian Flores had issue with. It's hard for me to say what's in their heart. John Mara is longtime owner, the Maras and the Tisches. I don't know them. I mean, they could be the biggest, racists that you'll ever come across, for all I know. I don't know. It also could be just innocent. They wanted Brian Dable. They thought he was the right man for the job, and because of the Rooney Rule, they then still had to hire interview a minority candidate. So I think that part is tough. What is really, I think, damaging for the league far beyond, like, that's a social issue that is obviously of the utmost importance, and it's growing year after year after year.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about throwing games, the Miami Dolphins' possibility of throwing football games, I think that attacks the very fabric of the league. And if you can't trust that the games are on the up and up, and I'm not talking about tanking. I'm not talking about we're going to go with a young team and we know we're not going to win a lot of games, but that's going to be okay because we're going to have a good draft position and we're building for the future. I'm talking about Stephen Ross directly telling his coach to lose. You can't have that. And if they can prove that, he needs to go. Roger Goodell needs to step in and make Stephen Ross sell the Miami Dolphins, because you can't have a team that is offering incentives to his head coach to lose games. When you're throwing games, that's to me is far more damaging than anything else in sports, because you have to believe the games are on the level. And especially now with all these teams getting involved with legalized gambling and DraftKings and all these different casinos, that you want to get in bed with the gamblers, you better have an honest product. Otherwise, you're going to have a mess. And I think right now you have a potential to have a mess.
Yeah, I just want to reply to your comment about John Maurer interviewing Brian Flores just because of the Rooney Rule. I think that's the problem. I think interviewing, knowing that you are gonna, whether Jamar is racist or not, I think there's a systematic issue in interviewing somebody just to meet a quota, and I think that's an issue within itself. Whether they're a good person or not, I think that's a bad decision to make, because you had already decided that you were going to hire somebody, even though you had another person that's qualified that you were going to interview just for the sake of interviewing them. I think that's a big slap in the face of anybody, whether it's me, you, or anybody. Just interviewing somebody after knowing that you already had somebody that you're going to pick, that's wasting their time. Whether they're black or white, that's wasting their time. But it makes it even worse because it's always going to happen to the black coaches compared to the other coaches. And I think that's a huge issue in the league that the league have to address. And I think the issue, the way the league, right after the day after Brian Flores filed the lawsuit, the league came out and said that there's no merit to his lawsuit. I think that's a huge mistake by the league without investigating exactly what's going on. I mean, when Deflategate came out, they brought out all the guns to investigate everything that was happening. But with an issue such as important as racism, they're like, no, there's no merit to that. And then on Saturday, which is a week, maybe 5 days after Brian Flores filed the lawsuit, Roger Goodell sent a statement saying, "Oh, we have a huge issue in the league." Like, what's going on here? I think there's a huge issue in the league, and
it is. I agree, Vlad. There's a lot going on. In the first part, I would say I totally agree with you that it's unfair that Brian Flores had to go through that, and I would equate it with a slap in the face, just like you said. The problem, I think, is a very well-intentioned movement by the league, the Rooney Rule itself, which obviously had a lot of merit to put it in to help minorities get interviews, get more comfortable in the interview process and all that experience. But it just hasn't worked. And it hasn't worked for exactly the reason that Vlad said. It's being used. In other words, if the Giants had just decided to hire Brian Dable and they didn't have the Rooney Rule, they wouldn't have ever had the Brian Flores interview. And it wouldn't have had to have been a slap in the face to Brian Flores. Yeah. No one would look at it that way. But because of this rule, they're forced to do that. And unfortunately for Flores, he happened to be the guy who was being interviewed. And they had already had it set up, but they had already decided. Well, it certainly seems. I mean, this is all alleged, but it certainly seems from that text chain that he had with Bill Belichick that they were all aware that the coach was going to be Dable. And I also agree with Vlad's point. The league has just really shot itself in the foot so many times with these knee-jerk reactions. There's no merit, they're without merit. I mean, you saw it for 2 hours. Did you even spend any time discussing it? And like I said, I mean, in addition to the systemic racism that you see with the lack of minorities being hired, there was an allegation of a team throwing games. And again, in 2 hours, you decide it's without merit. So obviously they've walked back on that and they've decided they're going to look into this stuff. But I mean, they don't do themselves any favors with their PR. I'll tell you that. They don't handle a lot of these crises well.
Yeah, that's a huge issue for me, and we could spend hours discussing that. But thank you for sharing your opinion on that. I want to move on to the Patriots. I mean, now that we are not.
But you guys don't mind. I actually had a quick kind of
Sure.
follow-up question
Go
to
ahead.
ask Paul in regarding to what we're just talking about. So Paul, just wanted to ask you real quick, how does the league fix this? Like, where do they go from here? Like fixing these kind of issues with the hiring process of coaches and and executives. Like what do you think they should do to correct it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. I wonder if maybe they can do something to tweak the timing, and maybe all of these teams need to interview a minority candidate first. That way, there can be we already have our guy hired. There's no sham interviews. And then, I think I remember, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think I remember there being a story about Mike Tomlin when he got hired in Pittsburgh, all those years ago. They didn't really deem him like a really viable candidate. And then he went into the interview and he wowed them. He knocked their socks off. That's how he ended up getting the job. So maybe if you could get, maybe if Brian Flores had interviewed with the Giants, the first coach that they interviewed, maybe they never would have been exposed to somebody else. And maybe they would have been so impressed with Flores, maybe something can be done with the timing of these interviews. I don't know what the answer is. And I know a lot of people that are a lot smarter than I am have tried to figure out, these issues, and they haven't been able to do it. But it is a problem. I don't know what exactly the answer is. And I know it must be frustrating, for all of these, coaches that have the credentials to be at a higher level than they are. And like you said earlier, black, white, whatever. There's a lot of coaches that just don't get the opportunity for whatever reason, because I do think there's an element of just, that network behind the scenes and the same old decision-making process is used. It's word of mouth. It's relying on friends, and friends are friends. And I don't think there's enough exposure to different candidates that might be available.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that actually. I was listening to Tony Dungy. I think he was on the Dan Patrick show, and he said something like, you alluded to that. The timing of the interviews. Most of the time the interviews. Well, every year the interviews are happening during the playoffs, right? And the black coaches that get to interview are usually on these playoff teams. So it's like imagine having to face the Patriots this week, but you also have to go to an interview and think about a whole organization, thinking about their roster and coming up with a vision for them. So it's like you don't really have the time you need to actually get ready for this interview, properly, as opposed to like, the season's over, Super Bowl's over. Now we interview people. They have more time to get prepared for the week to actually go into these interviews and be prepared. And, maybe that will have an effect. But I also think that, I hear this stat brought up all the time when we talk about race in the league, that the league is made up of 71% black players, right? So why are these players not involved in these interviews? If you're going to have these people come in to, be the head of the team, which consists of majority black individuals, why are these guys, black or white, why are these guys not able to take part in these interviews? Like, let's say all the team captains or something.
Yeah, I mean, there should be some input, right? And I do think there are some teams that have actually had that a little bit. I think Deshaun Watson, before he got in all his trouble with Houston, was actually a little bit on the inside of some of the decision making. But it's a good point you raise. I'm not sure it would work across the board, but there should be a little bit more interaction between the players and the organizations. I think it's players, coaches, organization, but there's a little bit of a disconnect between the players and the top. So that might be a good way to go about it too, is maybe get the players a little bit more involved in all elements of the organization structure.
I mean, and I agree. That's a good point that you brought up, John, and thank you, Barry, for asking that question. But I think the root of this issue is the owners, is the white, old, racist owners. So I think if we are addressing an issue, we have to address it at the roots, and it's really about, obviously we cannot get rid of all the owners, but it's really about, like, teaching them. It's about challenging their views on race and exposing them and training them on being more open to other races, I would say. I think, anyways, I mean, I don't have the answers, but I think in addressing the issue, we need to address the roots of the issue, which is the owners, because the owners are the one making those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it can be tricky. I was kind of with you all the way. It was, the old white racist. Okay, I want to stop short there of just calling all the owners racists, because there aren't enough. Again, very well could be true. We've seen it with Carolina, right? Jerry Richardson, was forced to sell his team over some pretty questionable racial and sexual, right? Kind of things. So I'm not telling you it doesn't exist. I'm not a fool. It obviously exists. I'm 53 years old. I've been around the world a little bit, and it's obviously a huge, huge problem. But I just don't want to just paint everybody with the same broad brush and call every owner, a racist. So it's a complicated. You guys all talked about it. It's a complicated decision. It's a complicated topic that I think people try to simplify by saying, well, you just have to hire more minorities. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's true, but I need the right ones, because I need to win games. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad coaches, black, white, or indifferent. There's a lot more bad coaches in that league than there are bad quarterbacks. And that's a problem. They need to fix the coaching problem in general. There's a lot of things going on with that league, I'll tell you. I don't know how they're so successful. We watch everything they do, but I'll tell you, they make a lot of mistakes.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you for that discussion. I want to move on to talking about the Patriots in their offseason and some of their needs, because I feel as though they have so many holes at defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. Do they need a slot receiver? Do they need new linebackers? What's your take on what we need to get better and go deeper in the playoff? And what do we need to do in this offseason to get a better team?
Pretty much everything you said. Yes. I do think, the first order of business, I think, is going to be to settle down the coaching staff. And I agree with you, Vlad. I think, everybody knows that they have the opening in the offensive coordinator with Josh McDaniels going to Vegas. I think Bill O'Brien would make the most sense. I'm a little concerned that didn't happen right away. I'm not saying it won't happen, but he would be by far and away my top choice for that job. Because he has already done it here and knows this system very well. And he has a little familiarity with Mac Jones, because Mac helped him sort of learn the Alabama offense last winter when the Alabama season was over and Bill O'Brien was just coming in. So to me, that would be the top pick. If they don't get him, there's a little bit of a concern there. I'm already a little concerned because I don't like the idea of Mac Jones having two coordinators in his first two seasons. And the one thing to worry about with with Bill O'Brien is he's pretty highly regarded. He's probably going to get a job. He was interviewed for some of the openings. He didn't get any of the job opening. I think he interviewed in Jacksonville. He didn't get that job, obviously. But I think if he would have come to New England and New England has a really good season, he's probably going to be on an interview circuit again and he could leave. And now you're talking about Mac Jones, 3 seasons, 3 offensive coordinators. And that's not ideal. Not an ideal situation. So they need to find an offensive coordinator. Vlad, you brought up the defensive side too, though, and I think that's important. I think we all looked at it as like it's sort of co-coordinators with Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo. I don't think that's working. I don't think that dynamic has worked. I don't like it. I see you guys all shaking your heads. So you're all with me. We don't have to fight, which is good.
Sure don't.
I'll go upstairs and fight with my kids if I want to fight. I think that they need one voice. And I think that Bill needs to sort of identify who that voice will be. And I think when they're in meetings on Wednesdays, getting the game plan installed, and they're wrapping up practice on a Thursday or a Friday, and they're going over what they did and what they have to do. I think one voice is important. If it's Steve Belichick, I would find it hard to believe that he's the most qualified. But if that's what Bill decides, then go with it and let everybody know that he's the guy in charge. And if it goes bad, it's on him. If it goes well, it's on him. It seems right now that Bill was trying to sort of ride the fence on that last year when they had a couple of good defensive games here or there. Bill was quick to credit his son after the game. Steve made a great call there. And then, all hell breaks loose in those two Buffalo games, the one here in Foxborough the day after Christmas, and then the playoff game obviously was a train wreck, but Buffalo didn't punt in either one of those games. I didn't hear anybody talking in the postgame about how good the calls were by Steve. So I do think there needs to be a voice that the players know and trust. And they know that that's where I'm getting my information. No mixed messages. And I think they need to identify one guy. And it doesn't look like there are going to be a lot of changes on that side of the ball. I thought maybe Matt Patricia would be, maybe a full-time coach this year, but I don't know. A lot of no's again. A lot of shaking of the heads. No Matty P fans here. No Matty P fans here. But I think they need to do some work on that coaching staff. On the player side, we could talk about that for a while too.
Oh yeah.
The defense, I think, is going to have tremendous turnover. I mean, you look at and again, I'm not telling you every single one of these guys is going to go, but there's a possibility that you lose free agents like Dante Hightower, Devin McCourty, Jamie Collins, Jawan Bentley, J.C. Jackson. Those are 5 guys that are all up. Their contracts are all up. And 3 of those 5 guys, I would say Jackson, McCourty, and Hightower, very important players.
Yeah.
So if you're losing all of that veteran experience, I would throw in a guy like Kyle Van Noy, who remains under contract, but who knows? If all those guys go, maybe Bill just decides, let's go younger here at linebacker. What do they have? And they have a lot of names that I think we're all familiar with, but we really don't know exactly what they can do. And I'm thinking about guys like Josh Uche, Ronnie Perkins, Chase Winovich, maybe Cameron McGrone, who's a rookie 5th-round pick who had a torn ACL coming out of Michigan and didn't play, basically redshirted last year. Those kinds of guys are going to, you're going to need 2 or 3 of those guys to step into prominent roles next year. And they really have, none of those guys have really ever played significant minutes. So you don't know exactly what you're going to get from them. The secondary, if you lose Jackson and you lose McCourty, you're going to need a cornerback to come in. That would mean you lost Stephon Gilmore and J.C. Jackson within, back-to-back seasons.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jonathan Jones and Jalen Mills are good enough for you to be frontline cornerbacks.
No.
Or shaking of the head. See, so I'm getting a lot of agreement. So you've got to find a way, I think, to address your age and your speed at linebacker. You need to find some depth in the secondary at corner. I think you could use another guy on the edge to sort of, be a guy that can win one-on-one matchups. The way Judon was early in the season, I think he really tailed off. We haven't even talked about the offense yet. The offense to me was very limited, and it wasn't just because you had a rookie quarterback. I think the rookie quarterback actually played reasonably well.
Yeah.
But I don't think they have a tremendous amount of firepower on that side. Part of it is him. I don't think he is a dynamic quarterback. He's not a dynamic playmaker. He's more of a safe, get it out quick, stay on schedule. So I think, Vlad, you brought up slot receiver. I think Jacoby Myers is a really good slot receiver, but he's not the same kind of guy that Troy Brown, Wes Welker, Danny Amendola, and Julian Edelman were. They were all of these guys were better after the catch than Jacoby Myers, quicker,
absolutely
kind of guys. Jacoby Myers was a bigger slot guy, who did it with kind of route running and finesse. And then, he was able to use his physicality in traffic. And I think he had like 85 catches. So, I mean, he had a solid season. I like Jacoby Myers a lot. They could use a more dynamic presence. And I know everybody watches a guy like Jamar Chase. And, you're wow with the season that he had. And believe me, I was too. They need a guy like that. They need someone who can line up and take an 8-yard slant and go 60 yards. Yeah. They badly need someone who can make plays after the catch. So they don't have to be so methodical on offense. They run the ball. Obviously they had a good running game with Harris and Stevenson last year. I expect that to continue. But they need someone to give some chunk play potential to the offense, because having to go 10, 12 plays every time to score is a hard way to live.
I mean, and I'm guessing you don't. Do you want them to get a free agent or go into or trade, or do you want them to go into the draft to get that player?
The receiver?
Yeah.
I would like them to use it in the draft. I want to go second or third round. If you look at the draft, the last 5 years of wide receivers, there are countless guys that made immediate impacts, second, third round guys, Terry McLaurin, guys like that. You can find them. They're there. The guy that I really loved, coming out last year, the kid that went to the Jets, Elijah Moore. Yeah. I think he would have been a great Patriot.
I wanted them to draft him. The Pats, right?
Now I have no qualms with what the Patriots did. They traded up. They drafted Christian Barmore in the second round.
Who I love. Oh yeah.
So I have no qualms with what they did, but that's the kind of player. And I think you don't have to be in the top 10. Like Jamar Chase, special player, top 10 pick. But you can get a really good receiver who can make plays for you in the second or third round. You just have to find them. And there's a laundry list of guys that were taken second, third round, fourth round over the last, I'd say, 5 years. You're going 15, 20 guys that would look great in the Patriots offense.
I've been agreeing with you all this whole podcast, except for the Patriots going to the draft to get a wide receiver. I just don't trust it.
No faith in it.
No faith in it.
Right.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. They have not done well drafting and developing receivers.
But we can't just not ever go in the draft and pick one. We gotta get this right at some point, right?
Yeah, I agree. Just because you missed on N'Keal Harry doesn't mean you never pick a wide receiver again. But I do get it. I mean, it's they had a guy in Malcolm Mitchell, several years back. I think that was 17 now, maybe 2016.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
that's right.
He had a bad knee injury and cut his career short as a result. He was a guy that looked like he was a player. But that's the area. I think you can get a good player there. I kind of agree with Vlad. I don't want to take a first-round wide receiver, again, so quickly. Not. And I think they have so many more holes that they don't have to do that. But, I mean, I get it. You're gun-shy taking receivers because they haven't been very good. And I would say the same thing about cornerbacks. They haven't gotten a lot of really good cornerback. Those second-round picks, the Cyrus Jones, Jawan Williams, Duke Dawson. There's a lot of second-round cornerbacks that haven't panned out. They need to hit on a cornerback, I think, fairly early in the draft. They might have to draft a tackle too. They got a lot of for a 10-win team. They have a lot of holes. They have a lot of holes for a 10-win team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's another point. We need to stop drafting guys with knee issues, because it seems like we get one or two every single year for some reason. It's like guys are available, man.
And that's something too, John, that I think that they were able to get away with, taking guys that had some injury problems coming out, because you had Brady and you didn't have that pressing need to have these guys step in immediately. So you could take Rob Gronkowski, who missed his entire final season at Arizona, coming off back surgery. If he didn't work out in the second round, I mean, okay, not great that you lost a second round pick, but it's Brady. He'll make it work. You're still going to score. Now that one worked. You took Dominique Easley, who's coming off a pair of ACL injuries in the first round. Didn't work, But again, you have Brady, so you keep winning Super Bowls, and it doesn't matter. Well, now you've sort of turned that roster over. Those guys are gone. Brady obviously at the top of the list. Now it's Mac Jones's team. If you don't get him if you pick a wide receiver in the first round and he doesn't contribute, that's going to hurt you because Mac Jones isn't good enough to just overcome that and win anyway.
Yeah. We've had Paul for about 30 minutes now. Barry, you got a question for Paul?
Yes. So, well, wanted to ask you about the Tom Brady retirement, particularly the Instagram post and just how he handled that whole.
I knew that was coming up.
Right. I had to ask. That's a question that I had to ask Paul and get his thoughts on. So, just wanted to get your thoughts on how he handled that whole situation with him retiring, and also not mention the Patriot not only the Patriots organization but the fans
Right.
as well. So just wanted to get what you thought about about Tom Brady retiring.
Yeah, I mean, obviously great admiration and respect for Brady. I mean, for what he did here, for what he's done since he's gone, unbelievable career. I thought the word that comes to mind is I thought it was odd. I thought everything that happened from last Saturday all the way through Tuesday was really odd. When guys like Jason La Canfora and Adam Schefter and Jeff Darlington are saying, Brady's retiring, I didn't really think there was much doubt that he was retiring. I don't think that guys come out, not guys of that stature, to come out and risk their career with something they're not sure about. So yeah. I was pretty sure he was good, but for whatever reason, he wasn't ready to do it Saturday. Maybe it was because of the games. He didn't want to overshadow the conference championship games that were coming, and he was upset that it came out. But even then, on the Monday night, the Monday after, he had that, that stupid podcast that he does with Jim Gray. And he said that he was still thinking about it, and the Let's Go podcast, I think, or something.
Yeah, it is. Yep, with him, Jim Gray, and Larry Fitzgerald.
Yep. With Jim Gray and Tom and all those guys. So
I love that impression. That's awesome.
Tom.
No,
he's so creepy. I mean,
he is.
Whatever.
He is, absolutely. I don't know why I'm making fun of him. The guy's had a career that's far surpassed anything I'll ever do. So I don't know why I'm making fun of him, but it is an odd guy and an odd situation with Brady that he was sort of resistant to admitting, and then all of a sudden he comes out and clearly, had this well choreographed way that he was going to do it on Instagram, which even that in itself I thought was odd. Instagram, that's the best you could come up with for your retirement announcement, and then to not have any mention of New England, the Patriots, the Crafts, Belichick, the fans, Foxborough, anything, I found strange. Now, I wasn't necessarily upset by it or hurt by it. I know a lot of fans were and still are. I was.
And I would never tell anybody how to feel. Like, I'm not a big fan of that. Like, if you're upset about something, I don't think that it makes you feel better to say, what are you worried about that for? That's not what I want to hear. I'm upset about something right now. I don't need you to tell me that I shouldn't be upset. So I would never hold it against anybody for having feelings that they have. I just found it strange that Tom obviously went out of his way to not really mention anybody from New England. And despite the fact that it was such a huge part of his career, I've heard all the theories, and some of them I think make sense. But I still don't really understand, that he already said goodbye to us when he left New England. I don't understand what's so hard about saying goodbye again 2 years later when you're retiring. But, he obviously had his reasons. I don't think he's quite buried the hatchet. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. I don't think it was by accident. I don't think it was really overly related to the fans. But I think he probably felt like if I thank the fans, it's going to look really bad that I didn't say anything about Kraft or Belichick. I think he's a little upset with the way it ended. And, I don't know all the details, but from what I do know, I think he has probably a little bit of a right to be upset.
Come on, Paul. You're down there. You're down there every day. You don't know the details?
Right, exactly. You don't know the inside scoop, man.
Well, Brady called him personally.
Vlad's tough. So he beat it out of me. So Tom came by my office like 2 weeks ago, and you'd be surprised. Like, we worked there every day, and it's funny. I was out in front of my house tonight. We were just like chipping some ice away from my neighbors. Comes out, and he's talking to me. He's like, like I've been living across the street from this guy for 25 years, right? So he's a huge Niners fan. We're talking about Garoppolo, where he's going to go. And he's like, yeah, so do you ever have any real interaction with Belichick? And I'm like, not really. And, how about Brady? When Brady was here, I'm like, not really. It's just like you work there every day. And I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I've seen Belichick not on the field.
Wow.
Like, we're just not in the same part of the building that
Wow.
they are, and we don't have a tremendous amount of interaction. Brady, when Brady probably the first 5, 6, 7 years, we had a lot more access to Brady. But then once he got really big, when he started winning all the titles,
Nowhere to be found.
Yeah, that goes away a little bit. But I don't know exactly why he did what he did. I mean, like I said, I just keep getting back to saying it was strange. Yeah. It was a strange decision to me. Yeah. A guy who I thought was so careful about everything he did publicly would not really care what the reaction was going to be, because he had to know that the reaction that came was going to happen.
And I think you're right, Paul. I think he did care. And I think he intentionally wanted to piss people off. And I kind of understand it to the point where he said, I wanted to retire a Patriot. I wanted to be a Patriot all my life. You guys decided you didn't want that, so you don't get to be my retirement announcement. And I can see that.
I think that's what he did. I mean, I know that's what my buddy Tom Curran has written a lot from NBC Sports Boston. I don't know if you guys know Tommy. You get him.
We had Tom on the show.
Oh, he's been on. He's been on.
You've had him on. You've had him on. Yeah, I'm sure he spilled a lot more dirt than I will. He's crazy. Tom E. Curran, my buddy, he's crazy.
Yes, sir.
He's a good dude, though. Good.
Yes. Who else have you had on?
Woof, a lot.
Man,
everybody. You're just getting around. So you scraped
we pretty much had him.
So you scraped the bottom of the barrel and you found me. I get it. I get it.
Like that,
not
man.
True.
No. Don't say that. Don't say it like that. You're at the top. You know what I'm saying? You're at the top.
I'm at the top. Yeah.
No, you are. That's facts, man. That's the truth.
You guys are funny.
All right, one last questions for Paul before we let him go.
Yes,
I mean, if Barry has the last question, you can go ahead and take it.
All right, appreciate it, guys. Right, hey, this is my closing time here. So, all right, I'll ask you this. So, wanted to ask you, Paul, what's your favorite moment that you've had in covering the Patriots, and then your favorite Tom Brady moment as a Patriot in his career?
Okay, I think my favorite moment covering the team in my 23 years is an easy one, and you guys are gonna laugh. When I got there, like I became a season ticket holder in '93, and I was out of college for a couple of years. Parcells came and Bledsoe came, and I said, I think this is gonna work. I think we've finally got something. I'm gonna get season tickets. So I was a huge Bledsoe guy. So my favorite moment covering the team was the 2001 AFC Championship game when Tom had to leave the game when he hurt his ankle and Drew came in. And that drive when he went pass to Patton, scramble run, got lit up, knocked out of bounds, touchdown pass to Patton was by far and away my greatest memory. And after that game.
And you were at that game?
Oh, yeah. No, we were at, back then I traveled to all the games.
Probably, wow, that's awesome.
For 13, 14 years, 15 years, I think I was at every game.
Wow.
Now,
nice.
since
that's what's up.
Yeah, since we started doing, like we used to do the newspaper, Patriots Football Weekly, but now like everything else in the digital age, the podcast age, now you don't really need, printed publications. So once we went just strictly online, we didn't need to be at the games, and we started doing podcasts on the day of the game. So we do a pre and a post game podcast. That started probably like around 2010 or 11, somewhere around there. We just maybe 2009. I don't know. So that's when I stopped traveling to all the road games. But yeah, there was from like 99. Yeah, it was probably like 10 or 12 years. So 99 on every game. And at Pittsburgh that day, I remember I was so nervous for Drew because I just didn't want him to screw it up. Like after all he had gone through, I wanted him to have his moment, and he did. I mean, he had some shaky moments in the second half, but he played reasonably well. And, I think for a guy who was off for, 4 months, but between snaps, I thought he played reasonably well. And at the end of that game, him and Tom had a picture with the AFC Championship trophy, and I just thought that was like – I thought to myself at the time, that's the last time we're going to see Drew Bledsoe play for the Patriots because I knew he was going to get traded. And when they won the Super Bowl, that was it. There was no way Drew was coming back. So that was probably my best memory. And for Tom, there's a million of them for Tom, man. My favorite Tom Brady game is probably the 2014 divisional round game against Baltimore in Foxborough when they fell behind 14-0 and then 28-14. They had the ineligible receivers, the double pass from Edelman to Amendola. And then the game-winning touchdown pass Brady threw to Brandon LaFell is one of the all-time underrated Brady throws. Oh,
yeah,
just
beautiful.
A perfect throw.
Beautiful.
And that was a great comeback. I loved those playoff games with Baltimore because Baltimore, you guys might laugh because you guys are such Patriot fans. You probably just wanted some overmatched team to come in so the Patriots could smack them around and win 45-7, like they would do to like the Tim Tebow Broncos or the Brock Osweiler Texans. Like those games did nothing for me. I never had – when Baltimore came to town for playoff games, that was football.
Yeah.
I think they played 4 times in the playoffs and went 2-2, and they were all like 3 of the 4 games were wars. Like they were just really, really good, physical, tough football games. And I loved playing Baltimore because
football games.
What was that?
Very stressful football games. I remember.
Oh yeah. But that's what I mean. That's where the juice is. That's what I like.
This is my favorite
like I said, like you can have Pittsburgh or Indianapolis come in and they weren't ready to play. They weren't ready to compete with the Patriots in a playoff game. But those Baltimore teams, even the Rex Ryan Jets teams, with Mark Sanchez, they weren't afraid either. Yeah. Those are the games that you remember because those are the games when you win, there's a struggle. There's a pushback. Anybody, it's like Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? Every time these teams came in, they all thought they could do it, and then they just, cowered in the corner. Baltimore never backed down, and that's why I always liked playing the Ravens. That game in particular, though, down 14-0 and 28-14, to come back and win that one 35-31, and that really kicked off the second leg of the dynasty. Yeah, because that's when 4 weeks later they beat Seattle, then they beat Atlanta and the monster comeback, and obviously the second Rams Super Bowl. So it's been a lot of fun.
It has been.
What do you got? What do you guys have for those memories?
Well, I think that game that you just shared against the Baltimore, that's one of my favorite games ever. But it's not my favorite Brady moment because I feel as though the Patriots coaching staff just had a great attitude in that game because with the uneligible receiver, the two Edelman to Amendola, it was just an all-out because I remember we were playing Baltimore and I was like, man, whenever we play Baltimore in the playoff, they always give us a hard time and we always seem to either lose or it comes down to the last play of the game. And I was we're down 14-0, oh my God. We're down 28-14, oh my God, we're going to lose. And for us to come out on top and have those creative plays, that was literally one of my favorite games. One of my favorite games. Even I almost like that game more than the Super Bowl because it was just because I didn't think we could beat Baltimore. And, it was just a great game. So that's one of my favorite games for sure.
Yeah, for me, I definitely like the close games. You're at the edge of your seat the whole game. But some of the best moments for me definitely came in, and we just talked about this last week. It definitely came in the 2007 season, when Brady and Moss and Welker, to see what they were doing to teams like the Jets and, the game against the Dolphins where Brady throws 4 touchdowns in the first half to Randy Moss. And, I just remember thinking I've never seen a football team so good. Not that the games were great, but like just witnessing
Oh yeah.
that right there was just like, dude, that is football at its highest peak, and it's just, man, we're lucky to be New England fans for sure.
I remember talking to Andy Hart, who I worked with at the time. He is now at EEI. I don't know if you guys know who Andy is, but
Yeah, I do.
You know, Andy.
he's the short guy with the big muscles and the huge head. We used to talk that 2007 season when John was just talking about just like the overall excellence, the greatness that team had. The second game of the year, they blew out the Jets in the first game, and then they played San Diego in the second game. And the Chargers were really good in 06. That was supposed to be a measuring stick, and it was the same game that they did against the Jets. Just blew them up.
Yeah.
And me and Andy looked at each other and said, this team could go undefeated. And it was legit. Just,
wow.
No one talked about like being undefeated, in week 2.
Yeah.
But that team was so good, and it was so apparent that wasn't a fluke. They didn't just get off to a hot start. Like, you could see how good they were and how many problems they were going to present for people. And it took the whole season for anybody to figure out how to slow that team down a little bit. Now, eventually they did, and obviously we know how it ended. But
fortunately,
that was
very
that team was just the way John described. That was impressive to watch.
Not for sure. And then my favorite game, is a lot of games to choose from, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with that 2018 Kansas City, Patriots game.
That's the best game.
Championship. That's, to me, my favorite because, like, I remember that whole week going into that game, no one thought the Patriots had a shot to win. Everyone thought Kansas City was only going to win, but they were going to blow us out and we can blow the doors off. And that was supposed to be Brady's retirement party. That, where all the fans, were posting that were, Brady haters and not Patriot fans. And, but I always, knew that, they had a legit opportunity and chance to win, and just how great of a game that was. Was just something else, particularly in the second half when both teams were going back and forth and just answering each other with, touchdowns and just all those big third down conversions we got towards the end of the game, with Gronk and Edelman, how they always, stepped up in the biggest moments and, critical situations, and just the throws that Brady was making and on those plays was just next level. It was
Barry, that's a great pick. I think that's a lot of our like the individual game, hard to top that one.
Yeah,
we're just a great game.
For sure.
It was. Sure. I just real quick before we go, who do you got in the Super Bowl?
I like the Rams. I really, really like Matthew Stafford. I'm really rooting for him because I think he's been a good player for a long time. Yeah. That gets a lot of criticism. I even heard, some of the guys on ESPN today, one of the guys goes, well, Stafford's going to throw a pick. And I'm like, well, why? Why do you know? Why do you say something like that?
Why you got to say that? Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
right.
He's going to throw a pick. I mean, I think he's been a good player for a long time and played for a really, really bad team. And I think he sort of got the loser label because of that. Even Teddy Bruschi sort of alluded to that when he was getting traded. He's a losing player. Well, no shit. Like he's on a terrible team. There's not a lot of guys. I mean, could Tom Brady have done better than Matthew Stafford as the Lions quarterback? Yeah. The greatest of all time would have been better than that. But I don't just think anybody would have gone to the Detroit Lions and been much better than Stafford was. I love Joe Burrow. I think he's going to be great. I think he is great. And part of me would like to see a losing team like the Bengals have some success, but I'm rooting for Stafford.
Yeah, Stafford and Odell for me.
Odell really proved me wrong. I have to take my lumps on that one. I was not a big advocate of getting Odell when he was available. I thought he was done. I didn't think it was just about Cleveland. I didn't think he had a lot of separation. I thought he looked like he had lost a step and the injuries took a toll, but he's been a really, really good pickup for them, and really important because they lost Robert Woods right away when they got him. I don't know where they would be without Beckham. He's been really good for them.
I had a question about Odell for you, but I didn't want to ask you because I thought we were going on too long. But since you opened the Odell conversation, I figured I might as well ask the question.
Did you already know that I trashed him, Vlad?
No, not that. I mean, I knew that you weren't a big fan of him, but today's media day for the Super Bowl teams, and somebody asked Odell, how close was he to coming to the Patriots, and he said he was very, 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 very close. I think he was very 4 times,
like 5 times.
Right.
I didn't know that.
And then he said, I even joked with Belichick on the phone that if it was 3 years ago when Brady was there, it would have been an ideal situation. But now that Brady's not there, how do you feel about that?
Well, it makes sense from Odell's point of view. I could see him thinking that way. You don't know about the rookie quarterback. He just came from a young quarterback who had trouble getting him the ball in Baker Mayfield, So maybe he was looking at it like that. I can understand that. I find that interesting. I'm going to have to, when I hang up with you guys, I'm going to have to look
check that out.
I don't want to be caught unaware tomorrow doing my podcast. I took the day off. I had things to do today.
Right. Definitely got to check that out and do your homework and research on that for sure. Right. And
Vlad, I didn't get your favorite game.
Well, there's so many of them, but last week we had a discussion as well, and Barry brought up the game against New Orleans, and not that was my favorite Brady game, but the throw that he made to Kimbrel Tompkins to win that game, I think that's one of my favorite Brady plays. One of my
great throw.
Yeah, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Brady didn't have a great game that game. He threw a couple interceptions, I believe, and it was a close game, and the weapons around Brady wasn't great. But what made Brady great is that the game was never over until the game is over. And that throw to Kimbrel Tompkins to end the game, it was just unbelievable. Like, whenever I see that throw, it's one of the most beautiful throws ever. And then you add Zolak's call to that play. It just makes it really great. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the Show Ponies game?
Yeah, it was.
That was it.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yep.
Well, Paul, it's been great having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it, and you're making our show a lot better, for coming on. So, you're welcome anytime to come back on whenever you want to chat sports, man. And, if you're watching this, make sure you're following Paul at PFW Paul on Twitter, right?
Yep, that's it. I'm not a huge Twitter presence, I have to admit, but, we do what we can.
Right. For a guy with
like
35,000 followers, he's not
I leave that to you young pups, on the social media train.
We appreciate that, Paul. Hey, we definitely got holding it down and doing our thing and got it down pat. So we got you on that, no doubt.
I had a lot of fun with you guys.
Appreciate it. Yeah, this was
a lot of fun. You guys let me know if you want to do something again sometime or whatever. Maybe down the road. You just let me know.
Yes,
you guys are a lot of fun. I like when you guys laughing all the time and smiling. And we're not talking about brain surgery. It's football, right? It's supposed to be
football. It's supposed to be fun.
I don't really care about the cover 3 and the X receiver and the inside zone block. I don't really care about all that.
Right.
I like to watch. I like to be entertained, and I like to have fun. Looks like you guys are the same way.
Absolutely.
No, appreciate that. We try our best, so we appreciate it, Paul.
Have a good night, Paul.
You too.
Have a good night, man. Take care.
You too, guys.
Nice
Be good.
meeting you. Whew.
There we have it, man. That was a great Paul Perillo. You guys, if you're a Patriots fan, you see this guy pretty much on a weekly basis, on the Patriots app, Patriots Weekly. He does a podcast right after the post-game show. Like, this dude's everywhere. He's a legend around here when it comes to the Patriots. So shout outs to Paul Perillo. And if you're watching this, make sure you're subscribing to the channel. Subscribe, like, comment on the video, share the video. The more you like it, the more people that like the same things that you do will be able to see the video. And make sure you're following us on social media as well. We're at ProFan Sports on everything other than Instagram, and that's ProFans_sports. And until next time, man, that was it for us. We'll catch y'all later. Peace out.
Have a good week, everyone. See y'all next week on episode 99.
99.